1 minute too. So what I wanted to do today, and it is a subject I've covered a lot, but it's a subject I really feel strongly about. So it's all about sewing strips together, because that's when you really look at most of my projects, I do that a lot. So let's have a look at some things I have done sewing strips together. Well, this was the serger quilt I did years ago, and it's on my Teachable. And I used all serger stitches to sew that together. And you will see a lot of Flatlock. See this, the rungs on that quilt? See, I never did do the ends. So I used all Flatlock stitch and Flatlock wave to sew that together. And the reason I love it so is because it's so flat, it's so thin, it's so much nicer than seaming it on the sewing machine where you're going to get a big seam, thick seam. So some of you will recognize this. We did this in Serger Club. And you can see the arms of the star are sewn together. They're all strips sewn together using Flatlock. So it is something, it's the first thing that comes to my mind, except to say my jacket, which is halfway across the room. With this one, I didn't actually use Flatlock stitch to sew my sections together on the back and stuff, because I decided to use the applaud. So I actually sewing machine joined my strips, but I actually really like it when I do. So I had some strips where I'd done a sample of it to show you, and now I've lost it. I must have picked it up. Nope. Well, you'll never know now, but I actually did do a sample of how it would look using Flatlock stitch. And in all honesty, I'm not sure I didn't like it more. It might turn up before the end of the day. So here's another one that's the same star, and I've used the Flatlock to sew the edges together. And this is a class I taught, and it's called the Flatlock purse, and everything on here is Flatlock. Whoops. Everything on here is Flatlock. And what I want to say is that it isn't just the underside where the rungs are. You can also put your decorative thread in the lower looper and you'll get that stitch, which can be quite nice if you want a stronger block of color. And of course you can thread ribbon and stuff in. But see the zipper? I actually put that in with Flatlock wave. And we're not going to do Flatlock wave today, but it might be the next one, putting in a zipper, because it's actually a really nice, easy way to do that. Right, so I am just going to do the slideshow just so that I make sure I cover everything. It's only 6 slides, so it's not painful. Right, so my favorite method, and the reason is that I love the flatness of the seam. That is the main reason. So that's what I'm telling you here, okay? You get a much flatter seam. So Flatlock wide, okay, that's what I generally use. And I generally use the 2 threads because the 2 thread Flatlock wide pulls much flatter than the 3 thread. And also the wide pulls more easily than the narrow. So my choice of stitch is 2 thread Flatlock wide. And to do that stitch, you need to put there's 2 ways to do it, but for the first one, and the one I use most often, the decorative thread goes in the needle. And it can be hard to thread thicker thread through that needle eye. So here are some suggestions. You could always use a top stitch needle because it has a bigger eye. Okay, so people always worry about which needle to use, but when you're using the serger stitches, you can use any needle, and a top stitch needle will give you a bigger eye. The second thing, and this is kind of a big warning, if you're going to use heavier thread in your needle, do not use your automatic needle threaders, okay? They're not designed for the heavier thread. And what I always use is something called a Dritz 6-loop needle threader. And I get them from craft stores. You might find your local dealer has them, and they're very thin pieces of wire, and I will show it to you when I'm going to actually thread up for you, so you'll see it then. And then the last thing is, when you put decorative thread in the needle, you need to be a little bit careful about what kind of content it has, because it has a bit of friction going through that needle, especially at the speed that serges sew. So I recommend you use either a polyester or a cotton. But if you think to use something like a rayon, just be prepared it may fray in the friction in the needle eye. So just something to look out for. It doesn't mean you can't use it, just know that it could do that. You might find it doesn't, but it can. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to thread up for 2-thread flatlock in a minute. And one other thing I want to say to you is, if you're looking at your instructions in your quick threader guide, you're going to find that they always tell you to put the knife down. And the reason for that is this stitch is often done on a fold. And remember, it can be done on a fold. That's a great place to use it, but not when I'm sewing strips together. So I always keep the needle up, because the needle being up helps me to guide the fabric against the needle into the back of the machine. And then the next thing, and this I think sometimes puts people off using the stitch, is you have to use the subsidiary looper, sometimes called a 2-thread converter, depending on which machine you have. And you can see in these pictures that it's got the picture on the left says not engaged. That's how you have it 90% of the time when you're working with your serger. You have it not engaged. And in the picture on the right, we have engaged it. And you can see it's flipped over. Now on the Triumph, you will pull it to the right and then it will flip over. I think on the Ovation, it just flips over. The Evolution, it just flips over. But it depends on which machine you have. But the thing you need to know, this is the important part, on the end of that subsidiary looper is a very sharp point. Okay, I know how sharp it is because I've stuck my finger with it before now. But that very sharp point has to go into the eye of the upper looper. Okay, so I'll repeat that, into the eye of the upper looper. And all it does is fool the machine into thinking there's thread in there. Nothing more than that. And I'm going to add at that point that when you've finished a flatlock stitch, and you go back to use your machine and you find your upper looper is blocked, it probably isn't. It's probably that you've forgotten to disengage the subsidiary looper. Okay, just one to watch out for. So I've already told you about that stitching. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to demo. You know how I love to demo. So I'm just going to come back to me and make sure my camera's in a good position, get my machine over, and just check if there's any questions. I always get frustrated trying to open and flatten my flatlock. That's interesting, Carol. I would suggest on the Benino it tells you how to thread, so I don't see that there would be a problem with that because it doesn't have anything different to it. On the baby locks, there is a step that if you don't do it, your thread's very tight and it's hard to open. So I'm going to thread up and I'm going to emphasize that to you so that you can make double sure that you are actually threading it correctly, because it's different to how you think it's going to be. So let me see if I've got my, it's always a fight because my arms are only so long and my machine is so big. It's a fight to get the whole thing in. Right, I'm going to go over. There, we have it. It's slightly crooked. I can correct that. Right, is my microphone working? Yes. So here is one I've already done, and I used an 8-weight eleganza. And you're going to say to me, 8-weight through the needle? Yes, I can get this through the needle, but only if I use the Dritz loop needle threaders. So I'm going to take all my threads out and rethread so you can really see how to do it. So let me just cut my threads and run this out, and we will rethread. I have one more thread, the looper. Actually, that's one of the things I don't mind about the stitch. It's only 2 threads. That's a little less to thread up. Right. Hi, Missy. Missy's absolutely right. I didn't pick that up. Missy says the applaud doesn't do a wave stitch. It doesn't. That's right. So, right. So I'm going to start off. I'm just going to put my machine back to normal because I want to do everything that I would normally do. Right, so here it is sitting here, and I am now going to thread it for Flatlock stitch. And I'm going to be putting my decorative thread in the needle. So I always tell you that my lower looper is my favorite looper because I don't know an instance where the threading actually changes. So I have my foot up, I've clicked into my lower looper, and I'm going to close my tubes and just send my thread through where it says L for lower looper. And there it is. There's my lower looper thread. So it is the needle thread that's more confusing. Okay, so I am going to engage my subsidiary looper before I do my needle, just because it's here. Right, so this is the Triumph, and I'm going to pull it to the right and flip it over, and I'm going to make triple sure that the point on the end is actually in the eye of that upper looper. Okay, and I have my knife up, even though the instructions say no, because I'm working on an edge and I'm going to use it as my guide. So I have my 8-weight thread on my 01 needle, spool at the back. I know you can't see that. And this is where it's a bit different, Carol. You were talking about your stitch not pulling flat. And the reason could be this. This thread goes on the 01 needle spool pin up through the 01 on the aerial arm. And then surprisingly, it clicks in to the upper looper slot, which is completely different to where you'd normally expect it to go. You'd normally expect it to go over here. But the reason it goes here is it's going to release the tension on this thread to make it easier for you to pull on it. So important to check that. Now I'm just going to go straight over and to the needle. Remember what I said, I'm not going to use my needle threader because it could damage it. And I'm quite away from the machine, but I'm going to try and stick this 6 Dritz looped needle threader, and you can see it has a loop one end and it's straight the other. And you're just going to poke it through where the eye is. So the loop is on this end. And what that's going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to put that thread into the loop. And then I'm just going to pull this needle threader back, and I'm going to hold on to the needle just so, because you have to give it quite a good tug. And I think people are always nervous of breaking the needle. I honestly don't think I ever have, but if I do, I have loads more. So there's my thread, and it's back there. And I always think it's a good idea to create a thread chain. So I'm going to get my needle underneath my foot. I'm going to go around the back and come forward, and I'm going to hold my thread here, and I'm actually going to bring my looper thread up here because it never hurts to get a thread chain going. So around my knife, under my foot, and you see how they're both at a diagonal here? I have my stitch length on a regular 4 and my stitch width on 7.5. My automatic needle, automatic stitch selector is on A, And obviously I'm not on wave, this is a regular stitch. So I'm going to disengage my tubes, close it up, put my foot down, and I'm going to try and create a thread chain. And the reason I say try, you have to marry those two threads because there's only two threads. So it can, if you don't have them crossing over each other, it can be problematic. Right, so here we are. Do I have any questions on threading? Right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to sew a strip and then I'm going to open it. So for this stitch with the decorative thread in the needle, I'm going to put right side to right side. And I'm going to do one like this, and then I'm going to show you another tip. So I'm going to lift my foot and I'm going to use my knife as a guide. Okay, I'm just going to come out because I think just going to come around here because I think I lost you on that feed. So let's go back. Yeah, let's try this one. It looks like it's frozen. Okay, give me a minute. I'm going to find another way to get to it. It looks like I've lost my camera. Let's go back. It definitely looks like it's not working. I seem to have lost that camera for no reason I know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this and hope it will pick up my machine. Will it? Not particularly. It's going to be one more minute to try it. Let me try this one. It'll pick it up in a minute. Nope, it won't. Right. Right, I'm just going to use this camera and we'll get by with it, okay? I don't know why it's suddenly just gone dead. Perhaps the camera has died. I've tried recharging it and everything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this other section. Oh, I haven't sewed it once yet, have I? I've got one it is because I lost my screen. So I am sewing it, just running my machine along the edge. I know you can't see what I'm doing, but that camera's playing up. Right, so I have sewn it. I have sewn it with the raw edge against the knife. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull on it. And you see, I've got those stitches. And it pulled quite easily. I have seen people rip their seam apart. So. Turn it off and on again. I tried that. Right, so I have sewn it that way. And now some of you don't find it that easy to keep the raw edge kissing the knife. And I get that, you know, some people don't. And so they tend to go off the edge a bit or even miss it. I've seen it happen. So what I'm going to say to you is, and I can't do it because I haven't got the camera, but look, this is the solution. This is your lace applicator foot. And what you can do with that is you can set the guide, that's this bit here, and there's a screw in it. you can undo the screw, and you can set it so that the guide is totally level with your knife. Okay, so that's a huge advantage. No, I haven't got it. That's a huge advantage because then it would help you on stitching it. So given that I don't have that camera, I'm going to show you up here. So here we are. There's my 2 pieces of fabric. And what you're going to do is you're going to put it into your machine and you are going to use the guide. Can you see the guide? And you're just going to feed it in with that guide. Okay. I'm thinking I do have one other option. Let me see if it will work. Well, let me just take it out and put it in again. Let's try that. Nope. I'm not having any luck with it, which is really annoying. How much of my machine can you see? Let's have a look. Oh, you can see a bit. Okay, you can see enough for me to show you this. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that foot on my machine. There's my regular foot, and I'm now putting on the lace applicator foot. Remember, if you can't get the foot on, click at the back. And I am going to sew this one on using the lace applicator foot. Now, I haven't really double checked it for where it's going to. It's good. That is lined up with the knife. And so I think somebody said they had trouble. I think this would really help you. All you have to do is keep the raw edges kissing the guide. And I think it's a little bit more visible than the knife. So I think it makes it easier for those of you that are having trouble just using the knife. So there you are. I've done it. And now I'm going to open it. Right, so there it is. So let me see if I have any questions. The lace applicator foot, yes. Great. Okay, I'm going to push my machine away for it to show more. Right, so I'm going to go on to the other camera, just making sure that my video is still up. So there we go. So here is the lace applicator foot. And as I say, this guide here moves if you loosen that screw. It can move left or right. So let me show you one more time, me putting a strip on. And I do think this is an easier way to keep it super straight. In fact, I might even use it more myself because it does take the pressure of concentrating off, and I'm all for that. Right, so here we go. You're just keeping it into this guide. I used to use it, and then I guess I just got used to not using it. Right, so let me show you the stitch. So it should pull very easily, and I'm not trying to rip it apart, okay? Just make sure you pull on all the stitches, otherwise you'll have some stitches that aren't pulled. But isn't that fun? But what I like best is I always keep telling you, it pulls completely flat on the back. So there's less thickness than you'd get if you sewed it on a sewing machine. So that is that stitch. And what I want to do is just change my threads over. And I can't show you me threading, but you see me thread. It's the same, but what I'm going to do is I am going to change my decorative thread to my looper and my regular thread to the needle. Okay, so I'll bring you back round to me so you can see something. So I'm putting regular thread on the 01 spool going up through the top, coming down through the upper looper slot. Remember, it's a bit strange. And then I'm going to thread my regular thread through the upper looper slot and over to the needle. And on this occasion, I can use my automatic needle threader because I'm using a regular thread in the needle, so I'm not going to cause any trouble to it. Right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my decorative thread in the lower looper. And the only thing I'm expecting that could be a problem with that is the weight of the thread just may be too heavy. In fact, I already know it is, to fit through the air threading on the looper. So I'm going to change you over to the other camera and you're going to see what I'm going to do. So here is my heavier thread. And what I'm going to do is take a piece of regular serger thread about 50 inches long. The longer the better. I see people with very short ones. It doesn't work that way. It's quite a long way it has to go. So I'm going to fold my piece of regular thread in half. I'm going to put the cut ends together. And I've got a loop this end. Okay. And I'm going to put them into the lower looper. Send them through. So I've sent them through to the lower looper. And what I'm going to do is put my thick thread through that loop and just manually pull it through, and I'll move the camera to show you that. So here's my, I know you can't see much, just let me get it started and I will move it. Right, so now you're going to see the thread come out. See, I'm pulling it through the lower looper, and in a minute, abracadabra, the thick threads come through. So let's put that there for the minute. So what with this stitch, the stitch is going to be decorative on the top, which means I have to make a big change, okay? So let me just get myself a thread chain. Now remember, I still have the subsidiary looper engaged because I'm still only using 2 threads. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sew another strip together. But this time round, what I have to do is put wrong sides together. Okay, so I've got my fabric and it's wrong sides together. Do you remember when I used the other stitch, we put right sides together? This time I'm putting wrong sides together. Let's move that so you can see better what I'm stitching. Right, so here is my stitch and this is the right side of my fabric. And what I'm going to do is pull on both sides. And you see the stitch I'm getting? It's not the rungs that we had with the other side. It's kind of more of a, I don't know, a zigzaggy stitch. It looks more like a serger stitch than the rungs do. But isn't that fun? And again, that could be your choice. And what I do is I often put ribbon and trim and all that type of thing. Let me grab my I'll come round to the front because that's just easier with my system. So you see the way I put ribbon and trim through them? There's lots of options for decorating more with the Flatlock stitch. And even the stitch I've just done, you can put a ribbon under that, which looks really pretty too. So let me check questions. You could also use the new cover stitch table and use the guide you usually use on the cover stitch side. The table makes the guide usable on the overlock side. Absolutely, you could. You absolutely could. What size thread are you using? I'm using an 8-way eleganza. And you know what thread's like? They say 8-weight. I think it's a little bit lighter than that. So remember, you would have to use the special threaders to get it through the needle. Is your knife locked when you use the lace applicator foot? No, it's up. It's dead in line with the front of the knife. And actually, that's one of the things I really like about it, because I've got a guide that I'm going in on, and then when it gets to the knife, it's guided again. So it really helps to keep it straight. The only time when I might consider putting the knife down, even though the instructions tell you to, is on a fold. But even then I don't, because it's just so much more exciting with the knife up. You know, I don't get much excitement. But really, if you position it right, you shouldn't cut it anyway. But no, I keep the knife up, and it is a very useful guide, even behind the Flatlock guide. It's just more guide. What size ribbon? An eighth. An eighth. And it doesn't have to be ribbon. It can be all sorts of things. It could be a thread chain you've made using rolled hem, or it could be yarn, or lots of things. You know, it's anything that fits under those stitches, and they're quite wide. Right, so I'm sorry about the camera. It's still not working. I don't know. Who knows? But anyway, we got round it, and I managed to get the other one working, so that was good. So this is absolutely my favorite way of sewing strips together. And you know, another thing is I do a lot of strips. And I was thinking about it this morning, and I was thinking, why do I use so many strip fabrics? And I think it's partly because I can never decide exactly what color I want. Two, I want more energy, so I add more strips in. And I just love that strip look, you know. It's almost a sentimental look, isn't it? I like strip quilts and things like that. I just think I don't know, there's something great about them. I love them. More energy, more things happening, busier. So, are you using ribbon instead of 8-weight thread? No, when I was talking about the ribbon, I was talking about threading it under the stitches to give it a decorative look. Okay, I don't use ribbon for this, but you can see I've got some ribbon in these stitches, and actually I threaded some trim in. Now, if you're interested in that, there is a YouTube video on, I think it's on weaving threads. So you could look that up, or I'll try and find it and post it to the group as well. So yes. So that is about it on this stitch. As I said, massively underused, great stitch. I love it. Really good for children's wear. You'll get much thinner seams using it than you will a regular serger stitch. And just a great stitch all round. And you know, when I first got a serger, you had my serger I had the first time around, you had to take it out the packet and put it into the machine to engage the subsidiary looper. And I never worked out what it was for. So now if there's a machine there's a lot of machines still you have to engage it, but at least I know what it is and how useful it is and why I would want to use it. And as I said, and I'm going to make this the last comment, don't forget when you stopped using Flatlock stitch to disengage your subsidiary looper. Otherwise you'll think your machine's broken when it isn't. Okay, so don't forget to disengage it. And a big thank you for coming in to see me today. And don't forget to sign up for the Serger Club. That starts in 10 days, I think, 9 days. And I will see you all in a couple of weeks. So take care, have a great week, and I'll see you in my group. Thanks so much for coming in and watching me. Bye.